The air in the dojo was a thick, physical thing, a humid cocktail of old sweat, industrial disinfectant, and the sharp, ozonic tang of pure, violent effort. It clung to the back of the throat and coated the skin in a slick film, a testament to the generations of Marines who had bled and strained and broken themselves on these worn, gray mats. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead with a weary, incessant buzz, casting a flat, unforgiving glare that bleached the color from the olive-drab gear piled against the walls and flattened the shadows into pools of ink. The only sounds were the rhythmic slap of bare feet on vinyl, the sharp exhalation of breath with each strike, and the guttural barks of a half-dozen men locked in the ritual of hand-to-hand combat. It was a temple of controlled aggression, a place where the Marine Corps distilled its ethos of violence into a series of precise, repeatable movements. Every corner reeked of tradition, of discipline, and of a very specific, very masculine form of pride. In a corner, away from the thudding impacts and grunting exertion, she sat. She was so still, so utterly devoid of presence, that she might as well have been a piece of forgotten equipment. She sat on a simple wooden bench, back straight, hands resting loosely on her knees, clad in nondescript gray sweats and a black shirt that bore no insignia, no rank, no affiliation. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, functional bun, and her face, clean of makeup and expression, was unremarkable. She was not large, nor was she small. She was simply present. A blank slate in a room full of bold, declarative statements. Her eyes, a shade of gray that seemed to absorb the harsh light rather than reflect it, moved with an unnerving economy, tracking the sparring Marines not as a spectator might watch a sport, but as a predator might observe a herd, noting patterns, weaknesses, and moments of exploitable hesitation. She was an island of absolute calm in an ocean of manufactured chaos, and in this place of performative strength, her quiet observation was a profound and unsettling anomaly. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Miller was the high priest of this temple. He was a man carved from the very bedrock of Marine Corps' infantry lore, his body a thick, powerful testament to 2 decades of service. His arms were corded with muscle and sleeved in the faded ink of unit tattoos and battlefield memorials. His face, a landscape of hard angles and sun-weathered skin, was set in a permanent expression of gruff authority, a look that had been honed to perfection in the dust of Fallujah and the mountain passes of Afghanistan. He moved with the heavy, grounded confidence of a man who knew his place in the world and believed it to be at the very center. In this dojo, his word was law, his technique was gospel, and his presence radiated authority like heat from a furnace. He was a second-degree black belt in the Marine Corps martial arts program, a certified instructor trainer, and he saw it as his sacred duty to forge lesser men into weapons. He was loud, he was profane, and he was utterly, unshakably sure of himself. It was this unshakable certainty that drew his attention to the silent figure on the bench. He had been circling the mats, correcting a young lance corporal's form with a sharp slap to the ribs, when his internal radar, honed to detect anything out of place, pinged. He stopped, his heavy brow furrowing. He had seen her walk in 20 minutes ago, expecting her to ask for directions or to be looking for her husband, but she had simply sat down and begun to watch. Her stillness was an affront. It was passive. It was analytical. In his world, you were either participating or you were in the way. This quiet female presence was a foreign object in the finely tuned machine of his dojo. It was a question mark in a room that only dealt in exclamation points. He swaggered over, the other Marines instinctively pausing their drills, sensing the shift in their gunny's focus. The air grew thick with anticipation. This was a familiar ritual, the gunny identifying an outsider, a weak link, a nail sticking up, and proceeding to hammer it down for the educational benefit of the flock. He stopped in front of her, planting his feet wide, his shadow falling over her like a shroud. He looked down, a smirk playing on his lips, the kind of smirk that was less about humor and more about establishing a pecking order. "You lost, ma'am?" he began, his voice a low rumble designed to carry across the now silent room. The word ma'am was laced with a thick, syrupy condescension. It was the verbal equivalent of a pat on the head. "The commissary is in the next block over. This here is a place of business." She did not look up immediately. She finished her slow, deliberate scan of two Marines grappling on the far side of the room, her mind cataloging their movements, before her gray eyes lifted to meet his. They were flat, calm, revealing nothing. "I am not lost, Gunnery Sergeant," she said. Her voice was even, pitched low, without a trace of irritation or intimidation. It was a simple statement of fact. Her placid response was like throwing a match on dry tinder. Miller's ego demanded a reaction. Fear, deference, even annoyance would have sufficed. This placid neutrality was a challenge. It suggested she was not impressed. It suggested she was not intimidated. It suggested, in some deep, infuriating way, that she was his equal. He leaned in closer, invading her personal space, the smell of stale coffee on his breath. "Observing, huh?" he scoffed, gesturing around the room with a sweep of his thick arm. "This ain't a spectator sport. This is the crucible. This is where we separate the warriors from the others." He let the word hang in the air, weighted with implication. "You can't learn what we do just by watching." A few of the younger Marines snickered, a chorus of nervous sycophants eager to affirm their leader's dominance. The woman's expression did not change. It was like watching a jackal dance and posture at the edge of a lioness's kill radius, utterly unaware of the danger it was in. The dramatic irony was a palpable force in the room, a secret held between the narrator and the universe, a cosmic joke whose punchline was rapidly approaching. "I understand the principles of kinesthetics and applied force, Gunnery Sergeant," she replied, her tone still maddeningly level, almost clinical. The technicality of her language, the sheer audacity of her calm, pushed Miller over the edge. His face hardened, the condescending smirk vanishing, replaced by a mask of raw irritation. This woman needed to be taught a lesson. His Marines needed to see the lesson being taught. The integrity of his world depended on it. "Principles?" he barked, a harsh laugh escaping his lips. "We don't deal in principles. We deal in pain. We deal in broken bones and shattered wills." He straightened up, his voice booming to fill the hall. "All right, circle up. Everyone, circle up. We've got a volunteer for a demonstration." The Marines scrambled to form a loose circle, their faces a mixture of excitement and pity for the woman who had so thoroughly misunderstood her situation. Miller turned back to her, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He was in his element now, the master of ceremonies in a theater of humiliation. "Get up," he commanded. It was not a request. She rose. Her movement was fluid, economical, without a single wasted motion. There was a coiled grace to her that was at odds with her plain appearance. She stood before him, her head barely reaching his chin, yet she did not seem small. She simply occupied her space with an unnerving degree of self-possession. Miller pointed to a young, eager corporal named Davies, a man who was strong, fast, and utterly devoted to the gunny. Then he pointed to a wiry, dangerous-looking sergeant named Rojas. "Davies, Rojas, you're up. Our guest here is going to show us her principles." The sarcasm was a blunt instrument. He turned back to her, his voice dripping with mock encouragement. "The objective is simple. They're going to come at you. You just have to defend yourself. Show us what you've got." She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. She did not speak. She did not ready her hands. She did not adopt a stance. She just stood there, breathing evenly, her eyes fixed on the two men now circling her. Miller, growing ever more frustrated by her refusal to play her assigned role of the frightened victim, decided to pour gasoline on the fire. He let his voice rise to a full-throated roar, a parade ground bellow that rattled the very walls. It was the climax of his public lesson, the final humiliating command that would break her. "What are you waiting for, Marines? Don't just stand there. Attack us, woman. Go on, show us what you know." The word woman was the final insult, a verbal shove meant to put her firmly in her place, to define her by her gender and dismiss her as an individual. It was the apex of his arrogance, the pinnacle of his profound and catastrophic ignorance. And in that precise moment, as Corporal Davies lunged forward to initiate the farce, the world ended. It was not a sound that stopped them, but a feeling. A deep, bone-jarring vibration that seemed to travel up through the soles of their feet, followed by a piercing, electronic shriek that clawed at their ears. The base-wide alert system. The lights in the dojo flickered once, twice, then switched to the harsh, pulsing red of emergency power. Over the klaxon, a synthesized voice, devoid of emotion, spoke with chilling clarity. "Real world, real world, real world, condition Zebra declared for Pier 9, USS Olympia. This is not a drill. All special security teams report to staging area Charlie. Real world, real world." The carefully constructed reality of the dojo shattered into a million pieces. The artificial crisis Miller had engineered was instantly vaporized by a genuine one. For a heartbeat, everyone froze, their minds struggling to transition from the theater of the dojo to the brutal reality of the alarm. Then, training took over. The circle of Marines broke apart as men scrambled for their gear, their faces suddenly tight with adrenaline and concern. Shouts echoed in the red-lit space. "What's happening at the Olympia? Get your gear! Move, move, move!" Gunny Miller, his lesson forgotten, snapped into action. He was a Marine, and this was the call. He began bellowing orders, his voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Everyone, to the armory! Full kit! Davies, get a head count! Rojas, get comms up now!" His response was loud, textbook, and immediate. He was following the procedure he had drilled 1,000 times. He was an instrument of the system, a cog in the great green machine, and the machine was now turning. He was reacting. The woman, however, was not reacting. As chaos erupted around her, she became a point of profound and absolute stillness. The switch from a quiet observer to the center of a life-or-death crisis did not alter her state. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, as if the preceding confrontation had been nothing more than an irrelevant distraction, a fly buzzing in a hurricane. While Miller and his men responded with the loud, kinetic energy of conventional forces, she moved with a purpose that was terrifying in its precision. She took 2 steps to the side, retrieving a small, battered-looking pelican case from under the bench where she had been sitting. Her fingers moved over the latches with practiced speed. She opened it, revealing not a wallet or a phone, but a block of matte black electronics, It was a satellite communications device, but it was a model none of them had ever seen before. Compact, hardened, and utterly devoid of commercial markings. She flipped up a small antenna and pressed a single button. The device came to life with a soft, green glow. Her entire demeanor had shifted. The unassuming observer was gone. In her place was a figure of pure, undiluted authority. Her face, previously a mask of neutrality, was now a study in intense, focused concentration. Her eyes, which had been watching the room, were now looking at something 1,000 miles away, processing data that was invisible to everyone else. She lifted the device to her ear. Her voice, when she spoke, was not the same voice from before. It was sharper, colder, stripped of all pleasantries. It was a weapon. 09. This is Vanguard. Report. A pause. The room was still a mess of shouting and movement, but a few of the Marines closest to her had stopped, their attention snagged by the sheer command presence she was now radiating. Confirm, she said into the device, her eyes scanning the ceiling as if she could see through it to the sky above. Condition Red Sierra is confirmed. I am on site at Pendleton, Maine. I am invoking operational control under Protocol Archangel. Acknowledge. Protocol Archangel. The words meant nothing to the Marines in the room, but the tone in which she said them sent a shiver down their spines. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock that controlled immense, unseen power. She began to pace, her movements tight and controlled, a caged predator. Scramble Ghost 1 and 2, silent approach. Vector 349er from Point Mugo. I want a full sensor sweep of the target vessel, thermal and acoustic. Deny access to all airspace within a 5-mile radius, civilian and military. And get me a direct, secure channel to Sea Dragon. Priority 1. Now. Gunny Miller, who had been trying to organize his men, finally noticed her. He heard the tail end of her transmission, the authoritative snap of her commands. His brain stuttered. Who was this woman? What was this language she was speaking? Vanguard? Sea Dragon? These were not standard call signs. They were from a different world, a darker, more classified corner of the military universe. He started to walk towards her, his own authority feeling suddenly hollow and performative. Ma'am, what do you think you're... He started, his voice a mixture of confusion and residual arrogance. She didn't even look at him. She held up one hand, a sharp, dismissive gesture that stopped him in his tracks more effectively than a wall. Her focus was absolute. She was a surgeon in the middle of a critical operation, and he was a janitor who had just blundered into the operating theater. The look on her face made it clear that if he spoke again, she would have him removed. Physically. A new voice, tinny and strained, crackled from her device. She listened intently, her brow furrowed. Negative. Negative. The base commander's authority is temporarily suspended per Archangel. The asset on the Olympia is a national security imperative. All operational decisions flow through me until relieved by Sea Dragon directly. Is that understood? She had just countermanded the authority of a 2-star general. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it hung in the red, pulsing air of the dojo. The remaining Marines were no longer moving. They were frozen, their mouths agape, staring at this woman who had transformed before their eyes from a meek civilian into the single most powerful person on the base. They were witnessing a masterclass in crisis management, a level of command and control so far beyond their experience, it felt like magic. She was not just following a plan, she was weaving it from thin air, her mind a loom processing dozens of threads of information, intelligence, logistics, asset deployment into a coherent tactical tapestry. The door to the dojo flew open with such force that it slammed against the wall, the sound cracking like a gunshot. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the chaos of the base outside, was a man who embodied naval authority. He was a command master chief, his uniform crisp, his face a leathery mask of deep-set wrinkles and scars that told stories of salt, sun, and clandestine warfare. On his collar were the crossed anchors and star of a fleet master chief, and on his chest, nestled amongst a fruit salad of commendations, was the unmistakable trident of a Navy SEAL. He was a living legend, a man who had the ear of admirals and the unquestioning respect of every sailor and Marine on the West Coast. His eyes, like chips of blue ice, swept the room, taking in the scene of arrested chaos. He saw the stunned Marines. He saw the blustering, now confused Gunnery Sergeant Miller. And then, his eyes locked onto the woman with the satellite phone. A flicker of recognition, of profound and immediate understanding, crossed his face. The Master Chief's entire posture changed. The hardened warrior melted away, replaced by the rigid formality of a subordinate in the presence of overwhelming authority. He took a deep breath, his chest swelling, and he bellowed a command that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "Attention on deck!" Instinct, drilled into them since their first day at Paris Island, took over. Every Marine in the room, including a shell-shocked Gunny Miller, snapped to the position of attention, their bodies ramrod straight, their eyes locked forward. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. All motion ceased, all sound ceased, save for the lingering wail of the base alarm. The Master Chief strode into the room, his boots striking the floor with grim purpose. He did not look at Miller. He did not acknowledge any of the other Marines. He walked past them as if they were statues, his focus lasered in on one person and one person only. He stopped exactly 3 paces in front of her, his body a rigid column of discipline. He raised his right hand in a salute so sharp, so precise, it could have cut glass. It was not the perfunctory salute given to a junior officer. It was a gesture of profound, almost reverent respect, the kind a king's guard might give to his monarch. "Commander," he said, his voice now a respectful baritone, stripped of its earlier parade ground roar. "Master Chief Thorne reporting as ordered. My teams are staged and awaiting your command at the pier." "Commander." The word dropped into the silent room like a 10-pound weight. It landed squarely on Gunnery Sergeant Miller, buckling his knees and stealing the air from his lungs. "Commander. Not a civilian. Not a lost wife. An officer. A senior officer. And not just any commander. The way Master Chief Thorne, a man who would make colonels nervous, addressed her. It spoke of something more. Something different. The woman, the commander, finally lowered her communication device. She returned the Master Chief's salute with a crisp, efficient gesture of her own. "Master Chief, good to see you. What's your team's status?" "Ghost 1 and 2 are 10 minutes out, ma'am," Thorne replied, still holding his salute. "We have a live drone feed of the vessel. No external signs of compromise, but thermal shows 2 unauthorized heat signatures in the primary engineering space near the reactor shielding. My breachers are ready for a dynamic entry on your go word." "Negative on dynamic entry," she commanded, her voice now the calm, certain center of the storm. "The asset is too sensitive. This will be a surgical extraction. We go silent. I want your best technicians to cut all power and communications to the pier, except for our encrypted channel. Use the diversion to insert a 2-man scout sniper team on the crane overlooking the aft deck. I will lead the entry team myself. She was going in herself. The revelation was another shockwave. This wasn't some desk-bound officer. This was a shooter, a door kicker, a tip-of-the-spear operator. It was then that the narrator's omniscient voice chose to descend, to fill in the gaps and connect the dots for the stunned Marines who were witnessing the disassembly of their entire worldview. This was not Lieutenant Jacobs. This was not even Commander Jacobs in the conventional sense. This was Commander Anya Jacobs, United States Navy. But that title was merely a placeholder, a convenient fiction for the Pentagon's paperwork. Her real title was known only to a handful of people cleared for the highest levels of national security. She was the commanding officer of a special missions unit so classified that its very existence was officially denied. A Tier 1 asset, operating directly under the Joint Special Operations Command. Her call sign, Vanguard, was a legend whispered with a mixture of fear and awe from the shadows of the Hindu Kush to the sweltering jungles of the Philippines. She was a ghost, a myth, a weapon forged in the hottest fires of the nation's secret wars. The medals she could not wear would have covered the entire front of her uniform. The operations she could not speak of had shaped the course of modern history. She was, in the simplest terms, one of the most dangerous and effective human beings on the planet. And Gunnery Sergeant Miller had just told her to attack us, woman. The full weight of this reality crashed down upon Marcus Miller. His mind, which had been reeling, now simply shut down. He saw his career, his reputation, his entire sense of self flashing before his eyes. He had not just made a mistake. He had committed an act of professional suicide so spectacular it would be studied for generations. He had stood on a landmine of his own arrogance, and the universe had just stomped on it with both feet. He had tried to humiliate a legend. Commander Jacobs turned her head slightly, her gray eyes finally landing on him. The analytical coldness was gone, replaced by something far more terrifying: disappointment. It was the look of a master craftsman examining a flawed tool. "Gunnery Sergeant," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of a death sentence. "Master Chief, get this man a helmet and a rifle. He's on my entry team." Master Chief Thorne's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, the only sign of his surprise. Then he nodded grimly. "Aye, aye, Commander." The crisis on the USS Olympia was resolved with a brutal, silent efficiency that was the hallmark of Jacobs's unit. The details would remain classified for decades, but the outcome was simple. 2 hostile agents neutralized, a critical piece of national technology secured, and not a single friendly casualty. The operation was over in 19 minutes from the moment Jacobs's team stepped onto the pier. To the wider world, nothing had happened at all. But inside the dojo, which now served as a makeshift command post, the reckoning had just begun. The emergency lights had been replaced by the normal, humming fluorescence. The Marines, her Marines, had been dismissed, sent back to their barracks with a story they would tell for the rest of their lives. Only 3 people remained: Commander Jacobs, Master Chief Thorne, and a pale, hollowed-out Gunnery Sergeant Miller, who stood at a rigid position of attention in the center of the mats. Jacobs had shed her civilian sweats. She now wore the sterile, functional black combat uniform of her unit, its fabric bearing no name, no rank, only a small, subdued American flag on the shoulder. She circled Miller slowly, her steps silent on the mat. She was no longer the unassuming observer, nor the hardened commander. She was something else now, a teacher, and class was in session. "Your performance on the entry team was adequate, Gunnery Sergeant," she began, her voice calm and clinical, as if delivering an after-action report. You follow orders well. Your marksmanship is satisfactory. You are a good Marine." Miller did not respond. He stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight, a muscle pulsed in his cheek. "But being a good Marine is not enough," she continued, stopping in front of him. "The most critical weapon a warrior has is not his rifle. It is his perception. It is the ability to accurately assess a situation, identify threats, and recognize assets. Today, in this room, you failed in that primary duty. You failed catastrophically." She let the words sink in, the silence stretching between them. "You looked at me and you did not see a fellow service member. You did not see an officer. You did not see a potential ally. You saw a woman, and you made an assumption. You saw a quiet observer, and you made an assumption. Your ego, your need to perform dominance for your subordinates, created a tactical blind spot so large you could have sailed a carrier through it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it was more intense than any shout. "I was not your enemy today, Gunnery Sergeant, but what if I had been? What if I had been an intelligence operative from an opposing force, gathering data on your unit's response times and martial arts capabilities? You would have not only invited me into your secure facility, you would have personally handed me a front-row seat to your readiness drills. Your prejudice did not insult me. It compromised the security of your entire unit. It was a dereliction of duty born from pure, unadulterated hubris." Miller finally broke. His shoulders slumped, the rigid military bearing dissolving under the weight of her words. His eyes met hers for the first time since the Master Chief had entered, and they were filled with a profound and bottomless shame. "Commander, I have no excuse," he stammered. "I request permission to tender my resignation. I will accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." Jacobs held his gaze for a long moment. She saw the broken pride, the shattered certainty. She saw a man who had built his identity on a foundation of flawed strength, and that foundation had just been turned to dust. Punishment would be easy. A letter of reprimand, a non-judicial punishment, a quiet transfer to a dead-end job. It would satisfy the demands of justice, but it would be a waste. "Your resignation is denied, Gunnery Sergeant," she said, her tone shifting again, becoming constructive. "And you will not be punished. You will be re-educated." She turned to Master Chief Thorne. "Master Chief, I am officially requisitioning Gunnery Sergeant Miller. He is being reassigned to my command, effective immediately. He will serve as the lead instructor for my unit's Red Cell program." Thorne nodded, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. He understood instantly. The Red Cell was a team of operators whose sole job was to think like the enemy, to probe their own unit's defenses for weaknesses, to challenge every assumption. It was a role that required humility, cunning, and the ability to see the world from an opponent's perspective. Jacobs turned back to Miller. "Your new job, Gunnery Sergeant, is to teach my operators how to be underestimated. You will teach them how to use an enemy's prejudice against them. You will design training scenarios that exploit the exact kind of cognitive biases you demonstrated here today. Your first assignment will be to write a detailed, 1,000-page after-action report on your own failure, citing every flawed assumption you made from the moment I walked through that door. You will become the military's foremost expert on why you should never, ever judge a book by its cover. You will take the lesson of your greatest humiliation, and you will forge it into a weapon to protect my people. Is that understood?" Tears welled in Miller's eyes. It was a punishment, but it was also a chance at redemption. It was a path forward that was harder, more demanding, and ultimately more meaningful than any simple disgrace. It was a subversion of punishment into a tool for growth. He swallowed hard, his voice thick with emotion, and managed a single, clear response. "Crystal clear, Commander." The story of what happened in that dojo passed into the quiet lore of the Special Operations community, and from there, into the broader culture of the Marine Corps. It became a modern fable, a teaching tool used in NCO academies and officer candidate schools. The tale of the Gunny and the Commander was a stark and powerful reminder, passed down through generations of warriors. The details shifted with each telling. Sometimes it was a training exercise, other times an alien invasion. But the core truth, the moral of the story, remained immutable. Years passed. Commander Anya Jacobs continued her silent, vital work in the shadows, her name and deeds remaining forever classified. But the seeds she planted that day in the dojo bore fruit. Master Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Miller became one of the most respected and innovative instructors in all of naval special warfare. He was a changed man. The boisterous, arrogant Gunny was gone, replaced by a quiet, thoughtful, and deeply perceptive teacher. His signature lecture, the one he gave to every new operator, SEAL, and Marine Raider who passed through his course, was legendary. He would stand before them, a humble and unassuming figure, and he would tell them a story. He would tell them about the day he, a proud Marine warrior, tried to bully a quiet woman in a dojo. He would tell them of his arrogance, of his blindness, and of the profound, life-altering humiliation that followed. He did not tell the story with shame, but with a kind of reverent gratitude. He used his own failure as the ultimate teaching aid, the ultimate cautionary tale. "The moment you think you know everything," he would say, his voice resonating with hard-won wisdom. "The moment you judge someone based on what you see instead of what they can do, is the moment you have already lost the fight. Your greatest enemy is not the man across from you. It is the arrogance inside you." And so, the lesson rippled outwards, touching thousands. The explicit moral of that day became an unspoken truth within the institution. It was a story not just about a woman in a man's world, or a SEAL in a Marine's dojo. It was a universal parable about the eternal conflict between substance and style, between quiet competence and loud insecurity. It was a testament to the fact that true strength, the kind of strength that can change the world, does not need to boast. It does not need to posture or preen. It simply is. It waits, it watches, it learns, and when the moment of crisis arrives, when all the noise and bluster have faded away, it acts with a clarity and purpose that bends reality to its will. The greatest warriors, the story taught, are never the ones beating their chests in the center of the room. They are the ones you never see coming. They are the quiet professionals, the hidden masters, the unassuming figures in the corner, waiting patiently for the moment to remind the world that the most dangerous weapon of all is a mind that is perpetually underestimated.